Hello and welcome to the Golden Sports Report, episode 64. I'm Andy.
I'm Dylan.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Sean.
And hopefully that didn't freeze and look really bad. So today's show is the first one in a week since our successful mock draft show, which we thought all went well. We got 3 picks, right? So 3 picks is a good thing. Thank you for watching, by the way. We had great success on that video. So today we're going to talk about NHL playoffs because that's important. We haven't talked about it in a week. And then recap the draft. So first, before anything, we will talk about Boston-Montreal. Who wins Game 7? End of one period. Montreal's up 1-0. Dylan, I'll let you go first. Who do you think is going to win this game, and what do you think the score is going to be?
All right, so Boston Montreal. My prior prediction was that Montreal would win it in 6. Obviously, we're in Game 7 now, but I'm going to stick with the team. I think Montreal will take it, and it's been a good series so far. It's 1-0 at the moment. I expect the game to remain close. I don't expect either team to pull away. So I'm going to go ahead and guess a final score of 3-2 with Montreal winning. And bonus prediction, Thomas Vanek's going to score one of the 2 goals, just for fun.
Oh, look at this guy. He's got all these predictions. Who's going to match that? Chris, you're next.
All right. I think Montreal is going to win 2-0. I think they're going to score. The last goal is going to be an empty netter, one of those stupid goals. Danny Briere is going to net it and be so proud of himself. And Thomas Vanek's going to break his entire body in the second period. No, maybe his leg. That'd be great. No. Thomas Vanek will get an assist on the empty net goal. Yeah, I think Montreal is going to take it tonight in a shutout, and then Boston's going to cry.
Even more predictions. Sean, how will you one-up all these predictions?
All right. So Montreal's going to win 2-1. Yeah. So Marchand is going to get a puck to the face, but he's coming back, and he's going to try fighting everyone because he's a little rat. And that's it, because I don't want to drag this on.
Now he's got name calling. Montreal 3-1. Empty netter. I'm gonna go Subban with one of the last 2 goals, and Jerome McGinley will score the goal for Boston. That's my prediction. So that was very quick, and we'll probably find out who's leading after 2 periods after the show, end of the show. Next order of business: Anaheim, LA. Game 6 is tonight. Anaheim's up 3-2, going back to LA, and we're just gonna predict how that series is gonna end up, whether it ends tonight, or ends Friday. So, Chris, I'll let you go first. How do you see the Anaheim-LA series ending?
Who's at home tonight? I think it's LA's at home. Oh, I don't think a single home team has won so far in the series, right? I think all the wins have been when they were away. That would suck.
Game 5 was won by Anaheim
At home. Well, I hope LA extends it to Friday. I think they can. I think they can. I think it'll end Friday night. Here's hoping.
Sean, I'll let you go next, and I think we all know where you're going to go with this, but you can go.
All right. I'm gonna think that Anaheim wins tonight. Uh, one, because personally, I think their whole line, or like all of their lines, are doing much better than the LA's. Besides their defense, but Anaheim's defense has been putting up with their offense like a lot better, even though most of Anaheim's goals are really, really lucky. But yeah, I know I talked to Andy about this earlier. How LA came back from that down three in the series, but I don't know. I think Anaheim, with all their young players, just have a lot more energy. I think so. Yeah.
And Dylan?
Personally, I don't think the series will end tonight. I think it will go to a game 7, and I think so. It'll remain close, and to be completely honest, I could see game 7 going either way. I know that Gibson has been incredible for Anaheim, and maybe the time's coming for me to retract my Ryan Miller statement, but that's not yet. So I'm going to go ahead and a game 7 will be forced. And I want to lean towards saying that LA is going to win just because I don't think he's great, he's going to be great. But he hasn't proven himself enough to take the Anaheim on a deep playoff run, I don't think. Not enough experience there. So I'm going to lean towards LA winning it in the 7th game, but it'd be cool to see Gibson take him far. But I just don't think it will happen.
I'm ashamed, Dylan. I thought you were my friend.
You don't have it.
Hey, Sidney Crosby, can you stop crying over there, please? Thank you. I am just going to say ditto to Dylan's statement, as that's pretty much what I was going to say. LA's going to win tonight, and they're going to win Game 7. Gibson he is great, but he is young. The only thing I won't do is say that I'm even putting Miller in doubt. Miller's going to Anaheim no matter what, so that's a thing.
I can't wait till this little rumor stops. Gives me nightmares every time we talk about it.
Gives you the chills. So I'm going to ask another NHL question because we're only 9 minutes through, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about the draft. San Jose has said that they're keeping their GM and their head coach. However, the Penguins and many hockey analysts believe Bilesma's out, and the GM, who's won GM of the Year countless times, are possibly being fired. Which situation is more puzzling? The Sharks keeping their coach, or the Penguins letting Bilesma go? Sean, you can go first.
Personally, keeping San Jose's coach there. They get to the playoffs almost every year and choke the first round. They were up 3 games in the series and they choke. How can you let that slide? And Penguins coach, he's a great coach. And I don't know if you want to talk about this later, but apparently there's controversy with another great player. But he's done so much for that team, and that team is still so good without coach. How can you get rid of that? But yeah.
Chris, you can go next.
I don't know. They're both pretty surprising. I think it's more surprising for a team to fire. Um, I, uh, I'm surprised that the Penguins would even consider firing the GM. The coach is kind of iffy, but I don't know. They've got a lot of like top end talent on their team, but then they really kind of bottom out after the first 2 lines. So I don't know. I think they rely too much on their top 2 lines, and their coach has got to do something with the other two. So I could see firing the coach because he couldn't get them to do much. But it still surprises me that San Jose, the coach, is still there. The GM, I think the GM's fine. He's brought in a lot of talent over this last, obviously, how long he's been there. And I don't know. I don't know. I'd say it's probably pretty. I'm surprised that Pittsburgh's going to fire all those people. That would be my surprise.
And Dylan, your opinion on the coach's situation?
I know it might be kind of contradictory because I've been thinking about this a little bit. I supported the Sharks keeping McClellan after they were eliminated despite their collapse and the fact that they usually do collapse. So, but my understanding is that it's a 1-year extension, so if they don't get it done next year or give the ownership and management reason to believe that they're not going to choke, then I imagine he's gone after next year. And in terms of the Pittsburgh one, the coach, I mean, you can say you have Malkin, you have Crosby, James Neal, Chris Kunitz. Well, Chris Kunitz is really only a product of playing with Crosby, but that's a different story. You could say he has all these great players, so he should have done better, but I do think there's a lack of depth there, as Chris mentioned, with their top 2 lines being pretty good, but after that. So, and to be completely honest, I'm not overly impressed. I'm sure there's certain instances that I'm forgetting, but the Pittsburgh GM in, what was it, 05, they had the 2nd overall pick. Ovechkin was taken. Take the next best player in Malkin. You get the 1st overall pick the following year. Of course, you're going to take Sidney Crosby. That's not like he made tough decisions there. I admit the James Neal trade was great. I love Alex Goligoski, but James Neal is much more valuable, in my opinion, to a team. But after that, I mean, they drafted Jordan Staal, and since then they really haven't had great drafts. And maybe part of that's a product of not having a ton of picks, but part of it's just they haven't been able to get many players who will become star caliber out of these drafts. So maybe you change things up. You have the best player in the world, in my opinion, and Malkin, who's in the conversation of being one of the next, debatable with Stamkos, Ovechkin, etc. Sorry if you heard my neighbors yelling. So I know I'm contradicting myself, but I'm not overly surprised by either. I wouldn't be surprised to see McClellan gone after next year, but I do think Pittsburgh's gonna clear out. And in terms of Pittsburgh, I think it's more likely that Bylsma goes than the GM if only one of them was to leave. So, which that may be an obvious statement, but those are my thoughts.
In my opinion, the San Jose Sharks keeping their coach and GM is a little more puzzling to me. I know it is only a 1-year extension, but they do choke year in and year out, and for some reason they can never get it done. They're a great regular season team, but they are not a good playoff team, and they never really have been. So it's like you kind of gotta think to yourself, well, why are they keeping him? As you see Pittsburgh's guy, although only in half a season, he did win a cup. The GM has not really made good picks in the draft for Pittsburgh, I'll give you that. But that's a lot to do with scouting as well. And the players they got in those deals were like Marian Hossa and, Jerome McGinley and players of that nature. Those are high caliber players, and they cost those kind of picks. He did make a good pick this past year's draft, 2 years ago, drafting Ali Mata, a really good Finnish defenseman, and you got to give him credit for that pick. Maybe he needs more first-round picks, but I think it's weirder that San Jose kept their people after losing year in and year out and not really improving. They're not improving. They are at a standstill. Whereas Pittsburgh, there's a lot of potential there for many years to come. So, that's my opinion on that matter. And, okay, so we're going to change gears.
No, talk about
NFL draft.
Talk about the Pittsburgh and the player controversy.
Oh,
Because I have a lot to say about that.
Crosby has may have a big impact on Bylsma's future in Pittsburgh. I guess I should set up the question like this: do you think a player should have that much leverage to decide whether a coach is fired or not? Or do you believe that should be in the owner's hands? Sean,
So we're starting.
first.
All right. No, players should never have that leverage because, one, they're the players. Two, the coach is supposed to be in control of their players. If you have that high of a caliber, I don't even want to say that because I'm sorry, Dylan, but I really don't think he's the best player in the world. One, well, because he can't even play in the playoffs. He only had assist, maybe a couple assists in the playoffs. He had no goals whatsoever. And for a player that had, I don't even know how many goals in the regular season, that's really sad. You want a good role model and a captain, and he can't even score a goal. Alright, there's my rant for him. But your coach is supposed to keep the players in line, and if you have someone so high on the pedestal that he can change an owner's mind, that's not good for your organization. Your coach is supposed to rule. And in this case, the player is doing all the talking, and it's pretty sad because he's a whining little whoa, almost swore. He gets whatever he wants, and that's really ridiculous.
We should have allowed you to have that as your final word. There was passion in there. Dylan, I'll let you go next. What's your opinion on Sidney Crosby and Bilesma and stuff like that?
Well, first off, I'll start with a counterpoint to Sean saying he's not the best player in the world. He had one goal this postseason, which I know is very disappointing. Only 9 points in 13 games. This is the first time in his NHL career, though, that he's been in the playoffs and had less than a point per game pace. So there's that. Plus 104 points in 80 games in the regular season. That's pretty good, too. And I actually read an article today. This is a little sidetrack, but people are now saying that because of playoff performances, people are starting to consider if John Taves is a better player than Crosby. And everybody was saying, no, there's no argument with anybody against Crosby. Anyways, when Andy was first started talking about the players wanting the coach out and stuff, it reminded me of a certain rumored situation in Buffalo years back. Ted Nolan's first stint as the Buffalo head coach, and the rumor that Dominic Hasek pushed for his departure, even though Nolan had won Coach of the Year when he was here in the first stint. So, I mean, it's happened before where a star player can have. We don't know if the rumors are true, of course, but it's happened before that a star player has had a role in a head coach's departure. But I don't know. It's debatable. I mean, if you have the best player in the world and he doesn't want to play under this coach anymore, then maybe you consider, like, hey, if we have to pick between one of these two guys, which way are we going to go? And I think I know which way they're going to go, with Sidney Crosby, of course. So, I mean, I don't support the idea that a player pushes out a coach, but if that's what has to happen, then you never know. So we'll see how it all plays out. I think Bilsma will be gone. I'm sure he'll get some sort of job somewhere else. There's a number of other vacancies, but I don't think that he'll be with Pittsburgh much longer. And that could be partly due to Crosby. So we'll see.
Chris, your opinion?
I don't really like when a player has a significant amount of influence for a team's staff. But when you've got a guy like Sidney Crosby, like, I don't know, I'm torn between the two because the dude is the guy's the best player in the world. Like, you can't just give that up for a good coach. Anyone can be a good coach, but there's only one best player in the world. So if Crosby's not liking the coach, I don't know. You try to find a middle ground, obviously, but you can't. Like, Sean's over here crying, but you can't get rid of Crosby. Everyone would just tear you apart if you did that. I guess you could make Crosby live with it and be like, well, you don't like him, you don't like him. Who cares? But I don't know. They did okay. I guess some teams just don't make it. You don't make it, you don't make it. The other team played better. So what? You lost. Don't blame the coach. Don't blame anybody. You just blame yourself. You didn't play as well as you should have. You know? Be responsible. Take the blame for yourself. Crosby should have done that. I know in an interview that I read, Crosby did take responsibility for it. He was like, I should have contributed more. Everyone wishes they could have contributed more. So, I don't know. I don't think a player should have say, though, personally.
I agree wholeheartedly with this statement. I don't think a player should have any say in it. And Dylan brought up the former Sabres situation with Hasek and the rumors with Hasek and Nolan and stuff like that. But this also reminds me of Bruce Boudreau a couple of years ago. Current Anaheim coach, Washington kind of stopped playing for him. And by stopping from trying and playing well, Boudreau got fired and got kicked out of Washington. Dale Hunter went in and ran a tight ship. So I have to say I don't want a player to have any say in this. And Crosby, in my opinion, is the best offensive player in the world. I think, you got Taves, Datsuk, and Bergeron for consideration for best player in the world. In my opinion, the best player is a guy that plays both ways. But Wayne Gretzky was traded, so Crosby can be traded just as easy. Best players I've ever played. Most of them don't play on one team, so I wouldn't put it past them to trade him, but I think that is the GM asking to be fired because that's a really risky move. Would go down as probably one of the riskiest moves in the history of sports. That's why the Wayne Gretzky trade is such a big deal. So that's that. Now we'll talk about the NFL draft. We'll start with Bills because we're all Bills fans here, and you will rate Doug Whaley's first draft on a A to F scale, and kind of say which pick you liked the most, and which pick kind of made you scratch your head the most. Be like, why did they do that? I will let. I know what Dylan. I feel like I know what Dylan's going to say, and I want Dylan to go last. So I'm going to let Chris go first.
It was kind of disappointing, to say the least, when the Bills traded up and didn't draft Khalil Mack. I don't know if you were in the party with me, Sean, but my disapproval was very loud and angry. But as I calmed down, I realized that we had just traded for probably the most explosive offensive player in the draft. I don't know if he's the best wide receiver, but he's definitely the most explosive. And the kid's got a bunch of raw talent, and he could turn out to be a great player. I don't know. I guess time will tell for that. Right now, I'd rate. Good. I'd rate it as about a B minus, maybe. Yeah, B minus. Depending on how well Sammy Watkins does, I guess it would go up, but that would be kind of weird. We needed some offensive line help. I think we got drafted, 3 or 4 of those. The linebacker they got was, I guess he's okay. But I was kind of disappointed we didn't draft Michael Sam. I thought that would have not only bring in, the kid's good, but I think that would have also brought in some media attention in Buffalo. And then the corner we got, he was a starter for 4 years at Duke, so anyone who can start for 4 years straight has got to have some talent. So I don't know. I liked the draft. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't anything fantastic. So
Okay. And Sean, what do you give Whaley? And what were your opinions on the players that he selected?
I was kind of really disappointed. Mostly because of the first pick and the amount of stuff we gave for that player. There was so much offensive or wide receiver talent in that draft, and I understand Walken is this great player, possibly really good, but there's so many other players, and to give, I don't even know, it was a first and next year's, was another third in the next, and then our pick. Sorry, go.
It was this year's first and next year's first.
Okay, I thought there was more to it, but still, next year's draft for first round when you have about 5 more picks to go and then it was your pick. I really don't understand that, and I it still bothers me because I really like Evans, and I don't know. All right, moving on. And then picking up another outside linebacker. I don't know what the hell he was thinking with that. We already have Spikes and Tico, but we have that Brown in the third that would probably cover for Spikes when he decides to retire. But getting that other outside linebacker, I just completely disagree with that. So yeah, my rating is gonna be a C minus. And
Yeah,
Dylan is displeased.
Dylan,
well,
this is why I left Dylan for last. I know Dylan's going to have a different opinion. So, Dylan, the Bills draft.
Yeah, I'm gonna have a different opinion, and that I think it went well. That's to be completely honest, I think most of our picks were pretty good. I do agree the linebacker choice in round 3 that was a little bit iffy. I don't mind the guy. I guess he's very similar in style to Brandon Spikes, so decent guy to learn under, and we can develop him for a little bit before asking a lot of him, because I know we have Kiko and Spikes, but there's another linebacking position, and I don't know how long that other guy's going to be with us, so whatever. We didn't address the safety position. That's another negative, of course, but we've got plenty of young cornerbacks, and I know there's been talk of moving one of them there. And Sammy Watkins, I don't know. There was no way I was going to be upset when we selected Sammy Watkins. So, I mean, this year's first and next year's first. It's a lot to give up, but our management said that we are committed to EJ Manuel, and with that, they proved it because we don't have a first-round pick next year to take a quarterback, which means they believe EJ Manuel is going to be the guy going forward. We didn't draft a quarterback at all this year. They are sticking with EJ, and I love that idea. I'm a big EJ supporter. I know Andy is different, and I know a lot of people disagree with me on EJ Manuel, but I'm not ready to throw in the towel there. In terms of, well, first, another thing on Watkins, he was the number one guy on the Bills draft board, so we got our number one player at pick 4. We didn't have to trade up to pick number 1 and give up 3 first-round picks for him, so that's a way to look at it that's a little more positive if you think we gave up too much. Cyrus Quandro in round 2, he was an offensive lineman that the Bills rated as a first-round player, so that was also pretty good. I don't know much about the cornerback or the other guys that hasn't already been said. Seantrell Henderson, 7th round pick. I think he was worth a flyer. He was rated originally, or I guess has the talent to be maybe a first round pick or at least a second, but the off the field issues with, I think, mostly marijuana knocked him all the way back to 7th, which you got to be smoking a lot of weed to get knocked back 6 rounds, to be completely honest. So hopefully he can get that in check, and maybe we got a steal there, or maybe he continues doing drugs, and I'm pretty sure that one of our guys, that might have been Whaley, said, you step out of line and you're gone. So they gave him a warning. Let's see if he can make the most of the opportunity. And the entire time, I've never said officially a grade that I give him, and I've been debating back and forth between 2. And I guess I mean, I know you guys are expecting me to be the homer and say like, oh, A+, but I'm not. A+ has never crossed my mind. But I'm going to say B+. I like how the draft went. I think moving forward, we'll benefit from the guys we've taken, and we were a better team than our record indicated this year, to be completely honest. So maybe next year's first round pick won't even be a good one, in my opinion. And those are my thoughts on this year's draft.
B+. I am surprised by this homer's low grade for his GM. So I'm going to give him. I wanted to go C-, but Sean took it. So the only way to go is down. So I'm going to give him a D+. I really, 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 really did not like that Sammy Watkins pick. And trading up those 5 spots, like Sean said, it wasn't necessary in this very deep wide receiver draft. I was in the thought that the Bills need a red zone threat, a big wide receiver, a possession wide receiver, not a little, wannabe. I'm not going to say wannabe Percy Harvin, but he's essentially Percy Harvin. And Percy Harvin's a good player, but you see how much Percy Harvin actually touches the football field? So that's a thing. Percy Harvin doesn't get many touchdowns, so that's a thing. That was obviously the pick I didn't like the most. The pick I liked the most, like Dylan said, the 7th round pick I really liked. I believe he was one of my sleepers. I considered him. He's had 3 marijuana problems, so that's a thing. And yeah, you don't lose anything with losing that 7th round pick. I didn't really like that 2nd round pick, and I know he's a good player, but, well, actually, NFL.com thinks he's a good player. NFL Network thinks he's a good player. ESPN, complete opposite. And it's funny. You look at the USA Today, and they ranked our draft as the 7th best. And we're going to get to this later. But the 7th best draft was the Bills, according to USA Today. You look at Mel Kiper on ESPN, and we were ranked second last. So it looks like a lot of people are, you know, on either side of the fence at the extremes in the way that the Bills drafted this year and the players they picked. We needed a safety, we didn't get it. We needed a tight end, we didn't get it. And in my opinion, I had no problem. Look at all the quarterbacks in round 5. Why did you not take a quarterback in round 4 or something? Like, come on. You could have gotten AJ McCarron really cheap. Could have gotten Aaron Murray really cheap. And I believe they'd probably be an upgrade over Thad Lewis, if you want to look at it that way and want to believe in EJ Manuel. But this believe in EJ Manuel for 2 years, it just extended it. If he can stay healthy, he might turn decent. But last season did not give me that opinion of him. So that's the thing. Update 2-0 Montreal over Boston. And the next question is, with 6 trades since Doug Whaley has taken the job, some were at the draft. We saw the acquisition of getting Bryce Brown from Philly and letting Stevie Johnson go to San Francisco, which could actually turn out to be a trade where it was Stevie Johnson for Bryce Brown. By the way, the pick we got from San Francisco, in a certain situation, Philly can choose to take that pick from us. So that is how that trade works if you think about it. And he's made a few trades. There are rumored trades that he didn't do. I saw second round he wanted to move up. I saw that he wanted to go to the top of the draft for Sammy Watkins. So that's the thing. Chris, I'll let you go first. In your opinion, do you like a GM that, do you like what Doug Whaley's doing with all these trades? Or do you think you'd rather have a GM that kind of didn't, you know, try and make all these deals?
Well, kind of somewhere in the middle. I like that he trades because that means he's an active GM and he's really, going out there trying to make the team better. But, and I thought, I like that we got something, like after we drafted Sammy Watkins, we didn't really need Stevie, I guess. But I don't like that all we got for him was pretty much either a 4th-round pick or a 3rd-string running back. Like, that's stupid. I like the trade for Bryce Brown because he's a good player, and he's got a lot of potential to be really, really good. In a couple of his he's started, what, 5 games maybe? I don't remember. But in a couple of them, he got upwards of like 170 yards running for that Eagles squad. But and the Sean McCoy seems to think he's going to be the starter over CJ and Freddie. So that'll be interesting to see. I doubt it highly, but never know. But he traded for Sammy Watkins. I'm glad we didn't try to trade. I'm glad we didn't trade all the way up to number 1, because that would have been awful and devastating and way too expensive and pointless. Now, and if the trade for that we wanted to trade up for Carlos Hyde, had we gotten that trade, we probably would have traded for Bryce Brown. So that was a thing. So that would have just been, 1 for 1. And I don't know which one I really would have preferred. Carlos Hyde will probably end up being better, maybe. He's about to go learn under the inconvenient truth. So we'll find out what goes on. I don't know. I think I like, personally, just to finish out, I think I like the GM that trades more.
Dylan, I'll let you go next.
All right, so I also like a GM who trades as long as it helps the team, and I know that some of us have our disagreements on if the trades made do actually help the team, but I was pretty happy overall. I agree, Stevie Johnson, there was a little bit less than I anticipated getting for him, to be honest. Bryce Brown's a solid acquisition. He won't start over any of our two, but I'll admit that if anything like last year happens where we have some injury problems, then I think he'll definitely be a solid fill-in for either or both of them, if need be. Hopefully we don't encounter that situation. I'm glad we didn't trade up to number 1 overall. We didn't have to trade up to number 1 overall for it, but that would have cost like 3 first-round picks, and then my grade would have been even lower, but it still would have been higher than all of yours, of course. So I like the trades for the most part. I think overall they helped us. I mean, we didn't necessarily need Stevie Johnson. I think he would have made a really good number 2 after Sammy Watkins, but I think that Williams, Robert Woods, Marquise Goodwin fill out the rest of our wide receiver core pretty well. And another thing about the Bryce Brown trade, I believe both Jackson and Spiller are free agents after the year. I don't personally expect either of them to leave, but in case they do, then we've got a young guy with pretty good potential there. So that's something, and I don't necessarily disagree with the Carlos Hyde move. I guess we really wanted him after Bishop Sankey went. I heard that we tried to trade up for picks 55, 57, 58, 59, and 60, and none of those teams wanted to move down for what we were offering. So it's unfortunate. I don't know what we were offering. I guess it was a couple mid-round picks, which we had. I think Hyde would have been a decent addition, but it doesn't upset me that we didn't get him. I'm fine with the Bryce Brown trade. We gave up a little less and got a decent guy. So overall, I'm pretty happy about how things went. I know they could have gone a little bit differently, either for better or worse, but I think Doug Whaley did well in his first NFL draft as our GM.
Sean, what is your opinion on all the moves by Doug Whaley, and do you prefer a guy that does that sort of thing?
I'm kind of in the middle. I like Chris said, I like an active GM, but I kind of like one that kind of sits back and goes with the flow and does does whatever he wants. But Whaley, he's on the verge of being a really dumb GM, in my opinion, at least. Um, well, going back to the first round, that was not necessary, I think. But doing all the moves, yes, it was. He likes doing those kind of things, but I don't know. I think Doug Whaley would be better if he made smarter decisions. It kind of didn't help my opinion when we got that pick for Stevie. Again, I think he was worth a lot more, but what are you gonna do? We have too many running backs, and yes, Freddie Jackson's getting old, but I don't know. CJ Spiller is obviously gonna be here for a while, unless his knee problems keep acting up. But yeah, I like an active GM as long as he's smart, and I don't know.
It's definitely something to think about. I'm not going to say he's dumb or stupid, but I am going to say if it's he would have gotten an F for trading up to get Carlos Hyde, and he would have gotten an F for trading for Sammy Watkins at number one. If you trade for Sammy Watkins at number one, it'd be really, really, really hard to imagine the Bills doing anything anytime soon in the playoffs. But back to trades. Stevie for Bryce Brown, essentially, in a scenario. Really, actually, that is the lowest pick that we gave up. Like, Philly, if the conditions are met, we'll get a third-round pick. So, really, Bryce Brown could end up being worth more than Stevie Johnson in terms of what we gave up or received. And that's just silly. How can you trade Stevie Johnson for a fourth-round pick and then trade a third or a fourth for a third-string running back? And Carlos Hyde, although he was widely considered maybe one or two in terms of running backs in the draft class, that is the position that everyone's joked about. Saying, oh, at number 9, the Bills are going to pick a running back because the Bills just always pick running backs in round 1. And we always have good running backs. There's never a question whether the Bills have a good running back. And I've said this before and I've ranted before on here about this. The Bills don't have a solid quarterback. And they haven't had a solid quarterback since Jim Kelly, and some may say Doug Flutie. Drew Bledsoe had a good year, but, you know, that was a year. I'm talking about a solid franchise quarterback. Jim Kelly was the last one. But you look at the running back since then, and we've only had 1 or 2 seasons where we did not have a good running back. So, it's ridiculous that we would have drafted a running back in round 2. That would have been terrible without our safety and our tight end. And if you get Carlos Hyde in the second round, you don't get the tackle. I'd imagine. Well, actually, no, you're trading back up. So you would have gotten the tackle, but you wouldn't have gotten those middle picks. Just, it would have been a waste. It would have been a waste of picks. So, maybe Whaley likes to waste picks. It looks like he likes to waste picks. He's the opposite of the Sabres. The Sabres are gaining and gaining and gaining. And the Bills are just purging their picks away. So, it's 2-1 Montreal, and we have either Krug scored the goal or Jerome McGinley. So the weird prediction may be right. Go team. So that's the thing. Next order of business regarding the draft. Looking at the draft and all the teams, and you know, you may have read how people and maybe Kuiper or even USA Today, something of that nature, viewed the draft and by team, analyzed it. Who, in your opinion, was the best team of the draft, and who was the worst? Dylan, I'll let you go first on this topic.
Excuse me. I'll start with the best, but I think Sean's laughing at the same thing I was. But for the best draft, I'm going with the St. Louis Rams. Personally, I think, to be completely honest, it would have been hard for them to have a bad draft when you have picks 2 and 13. But so maybe part of it is due to Washington giving them all of that for RG3. But anyways, Greg Robinson, he was my number one offensive lineman and a lot of people's number one offensive lineman in the draft. Get him at pick 2, solid addition, help protect the injury-prone Sam Bradford. Then they went to the defensive line and got Donald. LaMarcus Joyner in round 2 was a solid pick. They got Trey Mason in round 3. He should be okay because their running backs are Darrell Richardson and Zach Stacy, I believe. I don't know much about how they plan to use that workload this year, but Trey Mason could be interesting, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him sneak in for the job. And so I think they did well. They had a lot of picks in this draft. Garrett Gilbert, little known guy, former Texas Longhorn, transferred to SMU. He's a solid quarterback. I know he only went in round 6, but if you think about it, Mettenberger did too, and players like Murray and them went in rounds 4 or 5. And then, of course, one of the picks that has garnered the most attention in the entire draft, Michael Sam, of course, round 7 with pick 249. He has the second highest jersey sales, and he wasn't taken until the very last round, so right behind Johnny Football, of course. So that was a big pick, and I think taking him in round 7 at pick 249, I know Chris mentioned he was disappointed the Bills didn't get him. That could be something that really works out for them. I don't know if he was... Part of me has to believe that he wasn't graded as a 7th round pick, but because of he was an first openly gay player, I think that might have hurt his stock with some teams. I'm sure there were some teams that were a bit weary about bringing him in to the locker room just because of how some fans and some other players might take it, but I think it'll be fine. Could work out. So I think the St. Louis Rams did very well in a tough division. Could be pretty good this year. I'll learn to talk eventually. In terms of worst, I went back and forth on between a couple different teams for the worst, and part of me wanted to say the Redskins at first, but until I ultimately decided that them taking anything was helping them. So I decided Kansas City Chiefs. They didn't have a 2nd round pick. In round 1, they went D Ford. It's not a terrible pick, but I think they could have gone somewhere else. And I think D Ford will take a little bit of time to develop. Plus, they already have Tamba Hali and Justin Houston. And so that's something. And without a 2nd round pick, they went to round 3. They got a cornerback, Philip Gaines. That's fine. They did address quarterback in round 5 with Aaron Murray. I think that's a solid choice. Getting him that late could work out if these negotiations with Alex Smith don't. But overall, they didn't draft an offensive lineman until round 6, where they got 2 of them, and they lost 2 pretty good offensive linemen in free agency. And I think they need another receiver opposite of Dwayne Bowe to come in and help out Alex Smith, because I don't, to be completely honest, I can't think of off the top of my head who else they have other than Dwayne Bowe. Maybe what do you guys know? I don't know. But in round 4, they took a running back, even though they have Jamal Charles. So I question that a little bit. So I considered a couple different teams here, but ultimately I wasn't overly impressed with the way the Kansas City Chiefs drafted. And that's all.
I'm trying to look to find out who their other wide receivers are. I know they lost Dexter McCluster. Just 1 second. Donnie Avery. That's it. So Donnie Avery's the answer. Garbage. Sean, who in your opinion had the best and worst drafts? You're muted.
Yeah, sorry. My computer's going really slow. Personally, my opinion for the best team in this draft was St. Louis. They addressed all of their needs, and the thing that helped them were the 2 first-round picks. So that really, really, really helped them, especially with their conference division, whatever you want to call it, that they're in. It's going to really help them. Worst team, in my opinion, is the Colts. If I can get my computer to cooperate for once. But personally, I really thought they needed more offensive line help. And they didn't do that. They got 1 offensive lineman in the 6th round, I want to say. But the rest were... What's that?
They got Jack Nehart in the 2nd round.
Yeah, well, sorry. But, yeah, I just think they needed more help with the offensive line. And they're... Yeah, I don't know. They just needed a lot of help, and they just avoided every single thing that they needed, in my opinion, at least. So, that's my opinion.
Well spoken, Sean. Chris, best and worst team at the draft.
I think I've got to say the I don't know. It's kind of a tie for me with Houston and Jacksonville. Houston obviously did amazing. They've got 3 really good guys. They got Clowney, and then they got the best guard, arguably the best guard in the draft, Xavier Su'a-Filo. And then they got the 2nd best defensive tackle at a steal in the 3rd round in Louis Nix. And then they picked up a sleeper tight end in their next pick. And then they also got Tom Savage. While developing Tom Savage behind Ryan Fitzpatrick is kind of iffy. It's still I think Tom Savage is going to end up being a pretty good quarterback. But saying it out loud, I guess the Texans did really well, but the Jaguars I would kind of tie them with the Texans, because Jaguars got, they got Blake Bortles, who I had as the #1 quarterback in the draft, and then they got Marquise Lee, I do believe. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they got Marquise Lee in the 2nd round. Yeah, they did. A steal in the 2nd round, and he was red. A lot of people had him up in the top 3 wide receivers until an injury last season brought him down to like 4 or 5. So that early, they did pretty well. In the 3rd round, Jaguars. Where are they looking for them here? They got a decent guard, but I don't know. I think I'd say Texans did the best. For the worst, I got to agree with Sean. I think the Colts were the worst. They obviously start without a 1st-round pick, so that really hurts them. And then with their second pick, they draft a decent offensive tackle in Jake Uhort, which is an okay pick. But without that first round pick, they really just didn't help themselves at all. So, I don't know.
Also well spoken. I was going to also consider Houston at number one, but I've changed now to change up the pace. The drafts I did like, I liked Houston's, San Francisco's, and this team's. Cleveland, the team that trade raped the Bills. So, let's start with that. They trade raped the Bills. That was pretty good. They got to pick 2 first-round picks next year. They drafted Justin Gilbert, considered the best corner in the draft. It was kind of early, but that's the guy they wanted, and they knew Minnesota wanted him. So they actually swapped picks with Minnesota to get him at number 8. They drafted Johnny Football. I don't like Johnny Football actually at all. But in terms of getting guys that you want, they got a guy that they wanted. And you can't deny the fact that they went by their board, they wanted these guys, and they did what it took to get them. So that is the thing. They drafted Bitonio from Nevada, considered a first-round caliber tackle, opposite of Joe Thomas. This now gives them both edges of the line. Gives both edges of the line a solid tackle to protect Johnny Football. Drafted Kirksey. I don't really know much about Kirksey. Terrence West, a very good small school running back. They needed a running back, and that's the guy they chose. He was picked in the 3rd round, so it's not that big of a reach, and he's considered very good. So maybe they answered their need at running back. Pierre Desir from Lindenwood, a D2 or D3 prospect, but dominated at that level at cornerback. So, best player at his level of playing. Who knows how he'll do in the NFL, skipping that D1 talent pool. But in the 4th round, you can't say they did a bad job, and that was it for their draft. They only had picks in the top 4 rounds. They did a lot of trades. Worst team. It would be the wrong thing to do to say the Bills. I would like to say the Colts or Redskins, but I'm trying not to repeat. Trying to look at first-round picks here. I think I'm just going to go with. I'm going to go with the Bills, and I think it's already been said. They lost this year's first. Well, they lost next year's first-round pick, and they really didn't answer their needs, in my opinion, at safety, tight end. That includes red zone threat. And they gave away a pick next year that is significant. And I have a thing with giving away significant picks. I don't like the idea of doing that. So, you gave away a lot for a guy that is only explosive and athletic. Athleticism only goes so far. You need like the build and the size and shape of a good top-notch wide receiver, and that's not what Watkins is. So That's a thing. Last question regarding the draft, and the last question of the show. In your opinion, what was the biggest surprise of the draft for you? Sean, you can go first.
Alright. My biggest surprise was how active Cleveland Browns were. To be honest, this was the first draft, but I've watched at least. But they were on the hunt for everything they wanted in the first round, and they were like crazy at what they wanted, and they weren't. I'm trying to think of the word. Whatever. But they weren't stopping for anything. But yeah, that's crazy. But and then again, another shocking one would probably be giving up 2 first rounds for Sammy Watkins when Evans was right there for us to get. But I don't know. That's my opinion there.
Evans would have been gone anyway. He went to Tampa Bay and he drafted before us.
Chris has chirped Sean.
No,
Don't need to mute. I'll let you go next. What surprised you the most in the draft?
Part of me wants to say team like Tennessee picking up Taylor Lewan, even though they just picked up Michael Orr, and they've already got Annual Vitri, and I think they got one other tackle that's also like really good. So now they obviously have arguably one of the top offensive lines in the NFL. Another one, part of me wants to say the Browns picking Gilbert that high, but I think the most surprising part was Manziel going at number 22. And it was probably the best part of the entire draft because I just got to watch him sit there and squirm as all the other players got drafted. And I was just like, yes, thank you. Continue to pick other players, please. Because it was fun watching him just get so upset. Especially when Bortles got picked at number 3. Oh my god, he couldn't even look at Bortles. Oh, that was fantastic. Yeah, that's but the best what's the best pick, right? Most surprising pick, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna say I'm surprised that Cowboys didn't go defense as well. I was surprised that Zach Martin got chose there.
Ooh, I was surprised by him picking Dallas and Zach Martin. Dylan, what was the most surprising dash puzzling at the draft for you?
Well, I agree with Chris. I was also surprised by the Gilbert and Luan moves. I don't think they were bad moves. They were just surprising, personally. But another one I thought was a little bit surprising was Eric Ebron to the Lions. I know they've been looking for a weapon, but I think they should have gone defense. Even with Gilbert off the board, I think they should have gone defense. But the moment I remember being most surprised was pretty early when Jacksonville took Bortles. It was a pleasant surprise. I liked Bortles. He was my number 1 quarterback, but I fully expected Johnny Manziel to go right there. And I don't know. I was pretty surprised to see Bortles there. I'm glad they took him. I think he'll be pretty good for them. Definitely expected Manziel to go there, and that surprising move in itself somewhat made the remainder of the draft a bit more exciting. Not in that I wasn't excited to watch Johnny Manziel be disappointed for 3 hours. I was excited that essentially for every single pick until he was taken, there was a question in the back of your head. This team has to at least have Johnny Manziel's name cross their mind, no matter who they were. I know there were rumors of the Giants, there were rumors of the Cowboys, and some of those could have been smokescreens, but I'm sure that there were a lot of teams between picks 3 and wherever he went, 20 something, 22, between picks 3 and 22 that said, Johnny Manziel's here, do we dare pass him up right now? But so I'm glad Bortles went. I was surprised they took him over Manziel, but it added a different sort of element of interest to me and speculation throughout the remainder of the round until he was drafted.
Yeah. Yeah, the most surprising thing for me at the draft was, I guess, it's between the running backs falling so far. It went the longest in the history of the NFL draft for a running back to be drafted. It was, I believe, pick 55. The Bills wanted to be that team, but Bishop Sankey 54. Bishop Sankey. So the first 53 picks, there wasn't a running back pick. That was surprising to me. Um, Houston passing on a quarterback until they got their guy Tom Savage in the 4th round. It worked for them, and they had a great draft. But it worked out for them. So I'm surprised they waited that long. I'm surprised the quarterbacks. Garoppolo went in the 2nd round. I have to find him. He might have went. Oh, yeah, he did to New England. That's surprising. Garoppolo going to New England in the 2nd round. Heir apparent to Tom Brady. So Ryan Mallett will probably be the next great Patriots quarterback to start somewhere else. Follow the footsteps of Castle and Hoyer. So I wonder where he's going to go. So that's the thing. That's surprising to me. Garoppolo going to New England in the 2nd round. And with that, we've covered all our topics for tonight. Right now, it's still 2-1. Montreal over Boston. Iginla has been credited with that goal. Pat Chiaretti with the 2nd Montreal goal. So that's the thing. I guess we should get to our final words now. We are at an hour and 19 minutes, a little longer than we had anticipated, but it is our first show in a week, so it's okay. So it's final word time. By the way, in the comments, post anything that you'd like to comment on that we talked about. The topics were the playoffs and the draft and stuff like that. So, final words. Who wants to go first?
No.
Okie dokie, Chris.
My final word is going to be on. Let's find it here. It's going to be on Greg Hardy, the defensive end for Carolina Panthers. He was a rookie last season, and he was really good. And everyone was surprised at the Carolina's pick of a defensive end in the 2nd round when they have Charles Johnson on one side and then Greg Hardy on the other, and then they also have 2 one really good defensive tackle, and then another who's pretty good. So drafting a defensive line was kind of weird, but the next day, I think, pretty sure it was the next day, Greg Hardy was arrested for domestic violence, and some details just came out. I believe it was today, earlier this morning. That both it was between him, Greg Hardy, and his girlfriend, and both peoples were drunk at the time. They were intoxicated, and the victim claims that Hardy allegedly grabbed her, threw her to the floor and into the bathtub, slammed her against a futon, and strangled her. And then she also added that she threw him onto a couch that was covered with assault weapons and or shotguns, in which they were loaded, and apparently Hardy was allegedly threatening to shoot her if she reported the incident. Hardy will be forced to pay a $17,000 bond and required to attend 3 AA meetings a week. However, further suspension and possible jail time is still under investigation. You never know. We're going to find out. We'll get to the bottom of it. Which it
Keep us
does.
updated.
Yeah, I'll keep you updated. This, I just want to mention, this is the kind of thing that makes me disgusted that people would be upset that someone like Michael Sam would be on your team. Like, if this is true, this guy beat his girlfriend and threatened to kill her and shoot her, but we're afraid to have someone who's gay on our team? Like, that's pathetic. Like, some other guys don't want to poke too many prods here. Sorry, Mark, if you're watching, because I know you're in love with him, but Ray Lewis, we should all know the story. He was this close from being arrested for murder. I mean, come on, the dude's gonna be on the Hall of Fame.
OJ.
I mean, well, OJ happened afterwards, so he wasn't on a team at that point. Some other guys, Ray Rice. There you go. 2 Ravens players. Coincidence? Maybe. Terrell Suggs. We all know Terrell Suggs is somebody. It just makes me wonder why it's so weird to have someone who is gay on your team when you have people like this on there. Some other recent guys, Colin Kaepernick with his rape charges, Ben Roethlisberger with his rape charges, and Michael Vick, who literally would murder dogs and just compete dogs against each other for money. But we don't want to have a gay person on our team. Okay.
Passion from Chris Sexton. That is as true as it gets, right there. Give us a like in the comments and stuff like that for his emotion. Sean, do you want to go next?
Yeah. Alright. I'm going to my typical final word. Anaheim Ducks, of course. And I'm going to be talking about Timo Solani and the passion that he's pretty much giving the whole team. As you all know, he's finally retiring. he's old as dirt, pretty much, for the league. And there's this article I read. Him and John Gibson were eating dinner as a team. I think it was a week ago, and they were just talking. And Torrey Crew or Torrey Crew, John Gibson was was getting really nervous about this game, and he just started joking with him, trying to ease the tension. And it it was it's just a veteran guy can do so much for a team, and he's obviously showing that. Obviously, he has the Stanley Cup experience, so he pretty much tells everyone, calm down, just play your game. He's pretty much a captain to this team. Um, but yeah, he's doing so much for the team right now, and it's great to see just all the passion that he's having for the possibly his last couple of games. Oh, it is going to be his last couple of games of his whole career. So there's that. And on a side note, never mind. I don't want to say it because I don't want to take anyone's word. So yeah. And Chris, I hate you.
Sean with his Anaheim Duck loving nonsense. He is the only Ducks fan as a Golden Sports Report member, and will be made fun of as such. Dylan, final word.
All right, so, well, first, if only the viewers could see our group chat, then we'd get age-gated. But my final word is on baseball. Big surprise there. But there's a recent development in that Jose Fernandez of the Miami Marlins, widely considered to be the best, if not one of the best, young pitchers in the game, needs Tommy John surgery and will be having it either later this week or next week, meaning he's out for the remainder of this season. And Tommy John has been a big deal this year with, of course, I just mentioned Jose Fernandez, my boy Matt Harvey, Patrick Corbin, Jared Parker, Matt Moore, Medlin, Beachy, Griffin, Nova, and the list goes on. Josh Johnson, Luke Hochevar. It's just, I don't know. It's definitely more than usual, and we're only like a quarter of the way through the season right now. So there's 120 games to be played for most teams, and we've already lost a good amount of pitchers for the entire year. And we don't know why necessarily, because there's no correlation between style of pitching and the injury. Out of pitchers who throw over 100 miles per hour, it's the same percentage of them that need Tommy John as it is pitchers who throw less. And even a guy who, there was a guy, he's a knuckleballer. He tore his UCL and needs the surgery now. If you don't know, quick anatomy lesson, UCL is a ligament right here in the elbow. So it's the ulnar collateral ligament, something like that. And so obviously that's important if you're throwing a ball 90 miles per hour 100 times in a day. So I don't know. Hopefully they can figure out this situation, because a lot of people are needing Tommy John. Players have had to get it in the past. I know in the past couple of years we've seen Steven Strasburg get it. Jabba Chamberlain just got it. He's a relief pitcher, so it's not as damaging, but he's still a pretty good player. And the average age, according to this Yahoo article I found, of players needing Tommy John this year is 24.2 years old. That's a bad injury to have as a young player. It's not impossible to come back from. People do it all the time. But to see so many young guys going through it, it's pretty unfortunate. Hopefully they can recover. Hopefully them will be figured out something to help reduce the amount. But we really don't know what's behind all of this at the moment. So got to stop it before we lose all these good young arms. So that's my final word.
Stop throwing so hard and give the batters a chance to hit the ball for once.
A lot of good players have been injured by Tommy John. I'm just looking at the list now. You see names like Carpenter, Chris Carpenter, Jose Fernandez, obviously, Matt Harvey, obviously, Matt Moore, young pitcher, Jordan Zimmerman, Steven Strasburg, Adam Wainwright, great pitchers. And this is a year injury. It's like tearing your ACL in football. That's how important. My final word, NASCAR, as always. I did not do a final word last week because we didn't have, we didn't do final words. And we didn't do the show Sunday. So to recap all the NASCAR news that we missed. The race at Kansas Saturday night, Jeff Gordon won. Kevin Harvick dominated, but Gordon won. So Gordon's in the chase. Kevin Harvick's proving that he is a big contender for the Cup. Nationwide didn't race. Okay. All-Star event is this weekend, Charlotte Motor Speedway. They have two races. One is called the Sprint Showdown, where all the drivers who didn't make the All-Star race to figure out who wins. Whoever wins the Sprint Showdown goes on to the All-Star race. Whoever finishes first or second in the showdown goes to the All-Star race, as well as a fan-voted in driver. But the All-Star race, it consists of any driver that has won since the beginning of last season, or has won a NASCAR championship, or has won the All-Star race before. The All-Star race has a payout of $2 million. So that is the biggest purse behind the 500. So drivers really want that. Usually, because it's no points on the table, drivers will do whatever it takes to win this race and the big money. So that is how it is. I'm going to predict that. I think Matt Kenseth wins this week. I want to say Jimmy Johnson, as always. I will not, because that is not the right thing to do. So, yeah, the All-Star races this week. It's a fast track, about I would say 190 miles an hour. The longest race of the season next week. I'll talk about that Wednesday. So that's my final word. And that's pretty much the show. We've had one viewer pretty much the whole time. Thank you for watching. Give me a second. I'm going to see if you commented. And if you did, it's so give me a second. So, does anyone have an update on the Montreal-Boston game?
Still 2-1. 7.5 minutes left.
Win. Montreal. Montreal playing for the right to play the Rangers. And the winner of the Anaheim-LA series plays Chicago. No comment. As a viewer, if you could comment your opinion, any criticisms, anything of that nature, would be lovely. We'd appreciate it. Like, comment, favorite, subscribe. Last episode was very good in terms of views, and we're really happy about that. We only had 7 comments, and none of them were post-show. We imagine that, well, at least I'd imagine that is understandable with the, oddness of the show's topic. But please comment if you have anything you'd like us to talk about, and show support. And that's that. So thanks for watching. This was the Golden Sports Report episode 4. Bye.
Bye.